A black Springfield XD40 handgun, item 1A, was found on the living room floor, several inches from David's left hand, according to Detective Tommy Booth. The presence of blood was found on the grip, item A1-1, the slide, item A1-2, the trigger, item A1-3, and the muzzle, item A1-4 of the gun. Ridge detail blood was found on the magazine, item 1B, and labeled as item 1B-1. 2 cartridges were removed from the magazine and labeled as item 1B1 and item 1B2. Item 1C was a live round found in the chamber of the handgun. So here we have 3 live rounds found in the gun. Hairs and fibers were found on the gun and the magazine, and they were labeled as item 1A-5 and item 1B-2. Okay, now there are several blood mixtures found on the gun, specifically on the trigger, item 1A-3, and the magazine, item 1B-1. DNA results show blood of 2 or more individuals on the trigger, with one of those individuals being David Crowley. The blood did not match Kamel, but Rania could not be excluded as a possible contributor. That's in BCA Reports and Documents, page 310 of 488. David's DNA profile matches the blood on the magazine, which also had a blood mixture of 2 or more people. Kamel and Rania could not be excluded as possible contributors. Detective Brian Bone reported that the crime scene team found a total of 6 empty spent cartridges. The crime scene team also found 3 bullet fragments in the carpet. Bone wrote that due to the lighting in the house and not wanting to disturb any evidence, we suspended a detailed search of the house until the BCA crime scene team finished processing the scene. According to Detective Bone, the BCA CTS processed the scene in detail. After the scene was processed, Bone continued, we were able to move the rug that the bodies were found on. Now, this will be the same rug that 3 days later, on January 20th, item 53, which is a bullet that'll be tied to Rania, item 53 rolls out of this same carpet. So they didn't find item 53, but they did find a hole in the floor, but not in the ceiling. 2 big misses, huge misses, right in front of their faces. Okay, based on the firearms report completed on May 22nd, 2015, the gun, item 1A, fired 6 cartridge casings and 6 bullets. The cartridge casings are labeled as item 2, 3, 9, 30, 36, and 37. The bullets are labeled as items 42, 43, 44, 45, 53, and 57. Now, they did find an unspent bullet that was recovered. This is item 7, but it was not examined either. Even though it was found where these bodies were, could have had DNA as much as some of the shells did, but nothing. No, we're good. So a single source DNA profile matching Kamel was found on 3 of the 6 spent bullets, item 42, item 43, and item 44. This is interesting because autopsy reports state Kamel was shot twice. So how is it that the single source DNA of 3 bullets matched Kamel? Because so much of her head was missing, is it possible she was actually shot 3 times like many people have brought up and keep bringing up? Looking at this, I can understand why they keep bringing it up. It's a big question here. Okay, item 45 is the bullet that was shot into the living room floor, leaving bullet fragments on the hardwood floor, and then it lodged itself into the south wall of the basement. According to Joe Cooksley's report, chemical testings of the area around the hole failed to detect the presence of lead. Holes were observed in both the rug area, Cooksley continued, and the wood floor underneath this rug. Chemical testing of the hole in the wood floor also failed to detect the presence of lead. It's BCA report number 2, page 10 of 11. Now, once the processing of the crime scene was completed, authorities left the house with 4 bullets instead of 6. They returned on 2 separate occasions to recover a bullet that rolls out of the living room carpet, item 53, on January 20th, and a bullet found in the attic, item 57, on February 18th. The bullet known as Item 53 also contains a mixture of 2 or more individuals, with the major DNA profile matching Rania. Interestingly, David Timothy Crowley and Kamel Rasul Crowley are excluded from being contributors to the mixture. Based on those results, authorities should have been looking for another DNA profile. Unlike other results, it is not stated that 99% of the general population can be excluded from contributing to this bullet. A second DNA profile was found on this bullet, a bullet that had the major DNA profile matching Rania. Who is the other person? This is another question that members have continually brought up, and they're right to do so. At approximately 1300 hours on 1/20/2015, reported Detective Bone, Detective McKnight was contacted by the company cleaning up the Crowley residence at the request of David's father. The cleanup crew personnel notified Detective McKnight that they had discovered a bullet at the residence. They relayed to Detective McKnight that while picking up the rug from the main living room area, a bullet had come out of the carpet and fallen to the floor. When authorities are notified about a bullet hole in the living room ceiling, they again return to the Crowley residence on February 18th. Characteristics of the hole, Joe Cooksley wrote in his report, and its surrounding area indicate that a projectile was traveling generally west to east as it entered the ceiling and exited in the attic. It's BCA Lab Report number 2 on page 8. After examining the bullet hole in the ceiling, authorities find another bullet, item 57, in the attic above the living room, near the front door. Blood is not found on this bullet, but the DNA profile does match David Crowley. The DNA profile does not match Kamel and Rania. Authorities appear to have a hard time connecting item 57 to the gun. In an attempt to make a connection, authorities use item 31, which is a bullet fragment. According to the firearms report, item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features. This means that item 1 fired item 31. I'm not sure how that necessarily connects item 57 to the gun. This is one of the most confusing things that I've read in this whole case. Item 1D is listed as a bore patch from item 1. Item 1E is listed as a test-fired specimens from item 1. Latent print results are dated July 31st, 2015. 2 of the 3 latent prints suitable for comparison were found on the gun and the magazine. LP1A-1 is a latent palm print on the gun. According to this report, no known palm prints for David Timothy Crowley were submitted or found in the BCA files for comparison to the palm print on the gun. LP1B-2 is a latent fingerprint found on the magazine. However, this too could not be tied to David Crowley due to the limited quality and quantity of information in the latent print. No ties. No ties. Very interesting stuff. Is it clear that the gun was removed from the living room floor by the time Joe Cooksley and the crew entered the house? Remember, Joe Cooksley, in his report, he doesn't talk about the gun. So who saw the gun and which way was it facing? Very important. It's very important for me to have the actual quotes and for people to be quoted. So this book will kind of read very text-like, very textbook, I guess we should say. And that's all right, too. That's the whole point of it. The book is not for entertainment. It's not an entertaining topic. The book is for research purposes. It's just to help people who are doing research on David Crowley and the questions surrounding the allegations against him. David Crowley accused of a double murder-suicide, murdering his wife and his child and then killing himself inside of their home, writing Allahu Akbar in his wife's blood, apparently. Though there's really no clear way for anyone to tell who actually wrote. We know it was Kamel's blood. The blood on the wall was tested. That's Kamel's blood. There's no doubt about that. The questions are whose hand wrote it and how do police prove that? And it's simply not here. It's not in any of the documents that we have. Not in any of the documents that I have, definitely. So that was another odd thing. And there were more odd things, and there's been a lot of interesting stuff. It's not just about what was tested. It's more interesting to me what was not tested. All of the different things that were not tested. So I go through those, try to label them as items, and really try to take all of the data that we have and put it into one book, one place that people can just begin their research. This is not meant to end anybody's research. This is just meant to be the tip of the iceberg, because that's what this really is. Even with all of the data that we have, all of these documents, there's still obviously a lot more. And the question is, if police have it, it would be mentioned here. We know what they have, and it's nothing. It really is. It's just by the fact it's a process of elimination. That's really it. Because they couldn't find any evidence, not that they looked, but because they couldn't find any evidence that anybody else was involved, they just proved David Crowley is guilty. That is supposed to prove David Crowley is guilty. What did they do to look outside to think that maybe this was a homicide? Maybe these three people were all killed. How far did they go with that investigation? Now, they can claim that they kept going on and on for the whole year until the case was closed. They spent about a year working on this case. And they can claim that they were always open to it. But the fact is that the second Apple Valley Police Department press release specifically stated that they were treating this as a murder-suicide. That was January 18th. It's like 10 or 20 minutes before David's autopsy has even started. And the theory is already that David Crowley is guilty of a murder-suicide. Nothing in the house is found that would conclusively show you that David Crowley is guilty. Yet things are left in certain areas, staged in certain places. And those are the roads, those are the paths that we've been following, definitely. But there is one clear path here. What really happened? And that's the path. That's the big path. That's the narrow path. Side roads will all lead there. And if they don't, well, then we'll have to go back and get back on track. But that is the goal, is to get to the truth.